Hello, and welcome to the fourth and final part of Bonnie Belza's webinar workshop, DNA Kindergarten. We're glad you could join us today. I'm Bryant, and I'll be your host. Please make sure your microphones and web cameras are disabled during the presentation to provide a smooth recording. If you have technical difficulties during the webinar, please use the chat box and I can address your concerns. You're welcome to use the chat box during the webinar for comments and insights. However, all questions will be addressed at the end of the presentation. Bonnie Belza is a family historian and genetic genealogy DNA researcher whose degree in gerontology led her to genealogy research. She has attended I4GG, the International Genetic Genealogy Conference, Roots Tech, SLIG, and many national and local conferences, and is a frequent lecturer. She teaches the DNA kindergarten class at the 500-plus member West Valley Genealogical Society in Arizona, and presents on DNA genealogy with a focus on learning how to make using DNA fun. And if Bonnie is ready, then we'll turn the time over to her.
In this last session of DNA Kindergarten webinar series, we're going to apply what we've learned so far in the previous 3 lessons to identify the people that we share DNA with. First, let's take a look at lesson 1 and remember how we got here. In lesson 1, we talked about DNA science, where we get our DNA from, how DNA is shared, and we also provided a handout called the Shared Centimorgan Chart. Well, this week, the Shared Centimorgan project was updated, and there's a brand new version of the chart out. It's also been updated on DNA Painter, the interactive version of this chart. So we've added a handout to this lesson with the updated information, and you'll want to get a copy of that. It's a great reference when you're trying to understand how your DNA matches are related to you. In lesson 2, we talked about ethnicity, which means I have this percentage of DNA in common with the native people of some geographic region. We explained how the different DNA companies determine the ethnicity estimates that they come up with. And we talked about how you compare the ethnicity of your matches to your own ancestors to determine, if possible, which side of your family tree a match may be on. In lesson 3, we talked about solving the puzzle and putting the pieces together of our DNA research. We talked about how to download and transfer your DNA to other testing companies so you fish in all the ponds and expand the pool of matches. I described to you the beneficiary form. Your DNA is very important, and you want to secure it by identifying someone who can have access to it after you pass. We also went over the informed consent form. This form allows you to have permission from someone else to research their DNA if you're going to be helping someone as a genealogist. You can also provide a copy of this form to someone who's helping you. It identifies what you will allow and not allow to be done with your DNA. We went over the different places where you can test your DNA: Ancestry, 23andMe, MyHeritage, Family Tree DNA, and Living DNA. And we also talked about the DNA aggregate company, GEDmatch, where you can share DNA information with people from different companies. We talked about how to research and track your matches and provided a suggested handout for keeping track of your match information. And lastly, in lesson 3, we went through the steps for building a tree of your matches and finding your connections. So let's get started. Today, let's begin with, what is a DNA match? Well, it's someone who has tested their DNA like you have, which means they had to have been alive when the test was done. It's also someone who shares a minimum amount of the same DNA with you. The DNA companies vary a bit on the minimum shared DNA that they use to define a match, but it's generally somewhere between 5 and 7 centimorgans. It's important to note that even though someone is listed as a DNA match, you may not actually be genetically related to them. This is because we're all human beings and we share a lot of DNA just because we're all descended from Homo sapiens. This is called being identical by state. But we do have many relatives who are DNA matches who are identical by descent. That is, we do share a common ancestor with them. It's also important to point out that there are no cases of a second cousin or closer relative failing to share DNA with you. So if you have a known relative that is second cousin or closer and you don't share DNA, there is a break somewhere in your family tree. So moving on from a DNA match, what is a shared match? Well, a shared match is someone who shares DNA with you and another one of your matches, sort of like these interlocking circles. You share DNA with match number 1, and you also share DNA with match number 2. In addition, match 1 and 2 share DNA with each other. Again, it's important to note that you may not share on the same side of the family. Another difference we want to go through when we're looking at identifying our matches and shared matches is that the companies use different terms and different terminology. Ancestry calls a match that matches you a DNA match. They call someone who matches you and another match, a triangle, those interlocking circles, a shared match. 23andMe uses the terms DNA relative to describe someone who matches you. And they provide you a list of shared matches, calling it relatives in common. MyHeritage uses the same terminology as Ancestry, but Family Tree DNA refers to a match that matches you as just matches in their Family Finder profiles. A match that you share with another match is called someone that you are in common with, that Family Tree DNA. GEDmatch has a utility that you can use for free when you register at their site and upload your DNA called the one-to-many match list. And that is equivalent to people who match you. GEDmatch has another utility that provides matches of people who match both of 2 kits. So you take your kit and someone else's kit, and by comparing them with the people who match both, you find those shared matches. Lastly, Living DNA identifies matches to you as your relatives and matches that you and another match share as shared matches. Sometimes a bit confusing. So where do you find your DNA matches? We'll start out with Ancestry. If you've tested at Ancestry, when you have your list of matches from the DNA pull-down menu on the main page, you can click on one of those matches and you get a profile that shows you and the match on a single page. If you have a picture, your picture will show, as will theirs, and it's a good idea to put a picture. It will reiterate for you the predicted relationship. And as we said before, you're still going to want to take the amount of shared DNA, in this case, 24 centimorgans, and plug that in to the shared centimorgan chart or the interactive chart on DNA Painter to get more accurately predicted relationships for you to explore. Underneath the pictures of yourself and your match is a bar where you can choose to look at their tree, their ethnicity, or their shared matches. When you click on that shared matches button, you'll get a list of people that share DNA with you and your target match. Here's an example of using shared matches. I had a match, let's call him, I believe this was a man, a match that shared these matches with me. John matched my sister, my maternal aunt, and a half first cousin. Although notice that Ancestry identified that person as a first or second cousin to me. Well, my sister doesn't add a lot of information about identifying who John is, because my sister and I share so much DNA. I would expect someone to match my sister and myself in most cases. But the fact that John matches my maternal aunt tells me that John's probably on my maternal side of my family. That means I could eliminate my paternal side. But hold on. John also matches my half first cousin, and Ancestry's identified her as being on my father's side. This is an example where both I and John match my half first cousin, but I match her on my father's side, and John matches her probably on her father's side, who I'm not related to. MyHeritage has another way of showing you your shared matches. MyHeritage is a good place to test or transfer your DNA results because they provide a broader European focus. They also show you the number of centimorgans you share as well as the percentage, which is a good learning to get familiar with how much DNA represents how much percentage of DNA. One of the things I really like about MyHeritage is that when you navigate to their review DNA match from their DNA list of all your matches, you get a list of people that show you how you're related to the match and how your target match is related to that person. So in this example, me and Joe share a match who happens to be my father. You can see on the left side, they've identified that I am related to this person as my father. But Joe, on the other side, is related to him as a first cousin twice removed or a second cousin once removed. So that gives me an idea of where Joe might fall in my family tree. Below that, you can see that the second person we share is related to me as a second cousin or a second cousin once removed. Where on Joe's side, it shows that that person is his mother. So now I've found out information about Joe that makes it much easier for me to place him in my tree and determine how we might be related. Family tree DNA, as we said earlier, calls their shared matching being in common with. And it will list the matches that you and a person you've chosen out of your match list. You can see on the bottom where I put a check mark next to the match that's identified as a second to fourth cousin. And then I click on in common with. This will give me a list of people that I share DNA with as well as the target match. Something else that's useful at Family Tree DNA is you can choose someone and then click on not in common with. So if this were my brother, which would not be a second or fourth cousin, but if I chose to compare someone, my brother, to not in common with shared matches, I would get a list of people that did not match my brother. That is, people that I have the DNA for, but my brother does not. This is a way to find DNA that you may share with your siblings and the DNA that you and your siblings do not share. 23andMe calls their shared matches relatives in common. It's a little tricky to find this list. When you're looking at one of your matches, scroll all the way down the page on 23andMe, and near the bottom, you'll see this large blue button that says View Your Relatives in Common. They're listed on the left-hand side, and just like MyHeritage, you get a list of how you're related to that match and how your target match is related to that match. You can see that they show you the percentage of DNA that you share with each person and that your match shares with each person. When you click on one of the shared matches, 23andMe will also show you the number of centimorgans that you share with someone, as well as the percentage. GEDmatch assigns kit numbers to the DNA test that you upload. So you'll have a kit number for your DNA. When you click on your kit number, or you click on the one-to-many utility link, GEDmatch will generate a list of people that you are sharing DNA with. There are several more columns, one of which is the email address of your DNA match. Sometimes the names will be enough of a clue. However, people tend to use aliases or abbreviations, but they will have an email address that you can communicate directly with someone who is a match. GEDmatch also shows you the total number of centimorgans you share with someone and the largest piece of DNA that you share with that person and how many generations you are apart. So the first person on this list is either my father or my brother. Because I share enough DNA, it has to be one of those relationships of the people that I have tested. So now let's get to breaking down those brick walls in your family tree. DNA is the ideal tool to do this with. It's highly accurate, and it's primary evidence for our genealogical research. For those of you who do a lot of genealogy, you probably know that there is no 1890 census intact, as it was destroyed in a fire. DNA is almost like finding that 1890 census. It provides you new information from a different perspective. You can apply logic, just like solving a puzzle, and determine how you are related to people that you did not know were in your family tree. And you develop a new skill that's very helpful in working with other people on their DNA. So let's go over the steps to starting your DNA research. Now that we have an understanding and all the tools necessary to begin, the first thing is to define your goal. You may say, well, I just want to look at my DNA matches. And 3 and 4 hours later, you'll look at lots of matches and have nothing to show for it. So I suggest you get out a little yellow sticky and make yourself a note of what you're looking for in your research when you begin. For example, I may say, I want to search for my great-great-grandmother's parents. I could even make that goal more specific by saying, I want to research my maternal great-great-grandmother, Jane Bevan's DNA, and see if I can identify her parents. Now, I won't have her actual DNA, but I can define and identify people who descended from her and may have information on her parents. You want to take one or more of the DNA tests, and as we said earlier in the webinars, You need to take the test at Ancestry or 23andMe and then transfer to the other companies so that you can fish in all the ponds and accumulate the greatest list of matches possible. Very importantly, you want to build your own genealogical tree. If you've already done that, you can make a copy of it by creating what's called a GEDCOM, and we'll go over that in a minute. Or you can start with your paper records and input them into one of the genealogy sites. You want to gather information on your matches and keep track of it so you're not reworking the same things over and over. Most importantly, stay focused. Look at that yellow sticky, and as you start researching something that might look interesting, ask yourself, is this related to my goal? I mentioned that you may want to use a GEDCOM of your existing tree. GEDCOM stands for Genealogical Data Communication File. It's a standard format for your tree information, which makes that information capable of being exchanged between different platforms. You can get, for example, a downloaded GEDCOM from Ancestry by going to your tree settings, which are under your tree in the upper left-hand corner, and in the pull-down under tree settings, when you get to that page, scroll down toward the bottom and you'll see a place to click to request a download of your GEDCOM. Depending on the size of your tree, it could take a few moments, and the button will turn green when it's ready to download your GEDCOM. You can then save it to a file on your computer, or you can save it to a flash drive. You can also use software to export a tree that you might have in RootsMagic, Family Tree Maker, Legacy Family Tree, Reunion, or one of the other many offline software programs that you can use on a PC or Mac. All of them provide the ability to download a GEDCOM. With your downloaded GEDCOM, you can then load it up to where your DNA is. And now you have all the information in one place, your genealogical tree and your DNA results. If you're working on you and your spouse, you may want to separate your trees so that you have his branch and your branch. When you upload your trees to one of the sites, you want to make them public. This is so that people can see your tree and help you and themselves identify how you might be related. Anyone who is living will be privatized and not able to be seen everywhere you upload your tree. If you are working on an adoptee or looking for information on yourself as an adoptee, I recommend starting out with a private tree so that you keep the information private until you've made a determination that you are comfortable with sharing it in a public environment. Where can you upload your tree? You can upload a tree to Ancestry, Family Tree DNA, GEDmatch, and MyHeritage. At 23andMe, they will allow you to link to your tree at another site, but at this time, they do not have a tree or transferred your DNA. It's useful to have at least a direct ancestor tree everywhere, and then have one tree that you're focusing on where you flesh out your matches and add all those cousins and collateral lines. You want to name your tree something meaningful, not My Family Tree. No one's going to be able to get much information from that name. Use a name that's meaningful and will give people a clue. I find using my father and mother's surnames make for good tree names. Make your tree, as I said, and search, or if you make it private, you would feel comfortable, make it searchable also. That means that your tree of ancestry can be found by other people if they're searching for your relatives, but it's not open to the entire public. You also have profiles at each one of the DNA testing companies. One of the things you want to do with your profile is add a picture. Studies have shown that having a picture makes you seem approachable and helps people feel comfortable reaching out to you and answering you when you ask them about how you might be related. You also want to add your surnames, those family names that we made a list of back in lesson 1. And add your ancestral locations. Even though people can see your shared ethnicity, it's good to say where you hail from, what city or state you might have been born in, or where you live now. Again, it helps people connect with you when you're researching your matches. Now, here's an example or a case study of how I've gone about researching a particular match. This match, I'll call him Ed, showed up in my match list sharing 114 centimorgans with me. He was identified as a potential third or fourth cousin, and he had a tree of 10 people. The first thing I did was to plug that 114 centimorgans into the shared centimorgan list to come up with all these possible relationships. Wow, that's a lot of things to have to think through. There's a 43%, I'm told by this result, that he is a first cousin 3 times removed, a half first cousin twice removed, a second cousin once removed, and so forth. There's a lesser probability, 27 or 28%, that he's a second cousin 2 times removed, and an even smaller possibility, 15.39%, that he's one of these other relationships. Well, he's not a close relative, and I'm going to have to do some more digging to figure out which of these relationships is actually our relationship. What information can I gather on him? Well, because of the profile, even though he doesn't have a picture, I know that he's a male. When I look at his tree, I see that his parents, to the right of the picture here where you see CONS, that's his father. And where you see below the D by itself, that's his mother. I blanked out the names for privacy. But they show that they were born in 1933 and 1940. So that helps me identify that the match might have been born about 1960. One of the other things I found was that he had an Italian surname, and actually his father had been born in Italy. That's a good clue. I don't have Italian in my family. So he's probably related to me on his California-born mother's side. I start thinking about people who I know that migrated or live in California. Another thing you can do is open up the match's profile. And again, this is an example from Ancestry, but the same steps apply at the other DNA companies. From this match's profile, I can tell that he joined in 2005. To me, that says that he's been researching his family tree for many years. It also shows me that he last ago. That's probably the date that he did the test and signed in to look at his test results. Here's a third piece of information. I'm looking at his ethnicity estimates. It shows me that he's 66% English, Welsh, or Northwestern Europe, 22% Irish or Scottish, and 12% Germanic Europe. Uh-oh, what's missing? There's no Italian in his ethnicity estimate. I wonder if this match knows this. And if he does he realize that this means he's probably not related to his father? This is where I do the next step of examining my match and looking at the matches that he and I both share. When I looked at the shared matches, I saw that he shared matches on my paternal side. So now I'm narrowing the hunt down further. I have to find someone on my paternal side, a bit of a distance between me and our common relative because we are not very close family. And I have to look for someone that is sharing DNA with any of the matches that I may have tested. I'm fortunate that I tested my relatives over 75 years old. So I have about 15 to 20 tests that I have access to. When I compared the tests that he shared with me, I found that while he only had 114 centimorgans between he and I, he actually shared 162 centimorgans with my father's first cousin, my first cousin once removed. This gives me a clue that he might be on that line of my family. As I said, his father is not his biological relationship, at least according to his ethnicity. So I dug deeper looking into his mother. I saw that she was born in California. She lived near some of my known relatives, descending from my first cousin once removed. And so I developed a hypothesis. And with that in mind, I reached out to the match. This is the email that I sent him after having done that research. I give him my name. I told him where I found the match at Ancestry and indicated that we were potentially related. I asked him if he'd be interested in exploring how we're related, and I asked him to let me know if he weren't interested. Give people an out. Lastly, I provide him with my email address so that if he doesn't sign into Ancestry, as his profile indicated, he can respond to me using my email address rather than having to sign into Ancestry. Well, Ed here did get back with me, and the first thing he told me is that he was adopted. He had originally got onto Ancestry to see if he could identify his adopted parents and had actually found his adopted mother. He was not sure of his adopted father and had done the DNA test to determine that. So while the predicted results showed that we were 43% one of these relationships, the actual relationship was one of the predicted results. He is my second cousin, once removed. He and I share, as you see on the top of the chart on the right side, great grandparents. We both are descended from my paternal side, great grandfather and great grandmother. So let's go over those matched research steps again. First, you want to determine the predicted relationship using the amount of DNA that you share, either as a number or a percentage, and putting that into the shared centimorgan chart. Then you want to start doing your research log and gather information on your match. See if you can determine their gender, their approximate age. Find out what you can about their ethnicity. You can also look for things in their profile about when they last signed in or when they did their DNA test. Other things you might discover by reading their profiles and information on them, on their test results, is where they were born, what their surnames are, and where they were located. Then you put your thinking cap on and put these puzzle pieces together to analyze the information and develop a hypothesis. Where could this person fit in my tree? It's important to look at your shared matches. It will help you decide which side of your tree the person might be on. And using the other information you've gathered, identify a potential place for that person to fit in your tree. The last step is to contact your match. Don't immediately reach out to someone and ask them, I think we're related. Do you know how? That's not going to be very productive. After you've done the first 4 steps is when you want to reach out and contact your match. So how do you go about contacting a match? Well, you want to catch their attention. To do that, you want to determine what's the best way to communicate with this person. If they're a 20 or 30-year-old, you can bet they're looking at the information on their phone and not on a computer screen. So you want a catchy subject matter, nothing threatening, but something that will catch their eye as they scan through the emails on their phone. Make sure you introduce yourself to them. I don't give out my last name initially, but I will share my first name with them. I want to establish a friendly interchange. Consider your audience. If you're talking to someone that looks like they might not be familiar with genealogy or even DNA, don't talk down to them, but don't assume that they're going to understand all the terminology that we've learned in these lessons. Be friendly. Don't be threatening. Don't be demanding. Make sure you tell them where you took the test and what you would like, if they are wanting to, what you would like them to do to help you out. Importantly, show that you're willing to do some work too and offer to help them. And don't forget to explain how they can contact you. I suggest an email. Until you really get to know someone, I wouldn't share your phone number. So this is concluding our DNA Kindergarten 4-part webinar series. We've had 12 different handouts, which are available on the previous webinars. The last handout is available today with this lesson, and it's a list of web links, sites, and Facebook groups that you may want to join and explore to learn more about DNA. What we've learned in these webinars is about family relationships, how to diagram those relationships using pedigree charts and descendancy charts. We learned about the different kinds of DNA, Y-DNA, mitochondrial DNA, and autosomal DNA. It's autosomal DNA that we're doing all the work with when we talk about analyzing our matches and our shared matches. We did the basics of genes, chromosomes, and DNA. And we explained how ethnicity estimates done by the different DNA companies are based on reference populations that are always being expanded, which account for the differences in your ethnicity results over time. We explained how to predict a relationship based on the amount of shared DNA that you have with someone. We also touched on the basics of building your genealogical tree so that you can identify the potential relatives with a DNA match. Lastly, I hope what you've learned in these webinars has been fun for you and that you'll share your information with others. If you have any questions about the webinar, you're welcome to email me. And if you have any suggestions for future webinars, to expand on anything you've seen in this series, let us know that as well, and we'll look at putting together a webinar addressing those questions. And with that, Bryant, I'll turn it back to you and to the chat group.
Thanks, Bonnie. If anyone from the audience has any questions for Bonnie about her webinar or questions about her presentation, then yeah, please post them in the chat box and she can answer them for us.
Anyone have any questions about their own DNA matches that they've seen, or about even taking a DNA test if you haven't done a DNA test yet?
Yeah, it looks like we do have one question from April. It says, how high is closely related? What is the percent worth researching?
April, that's a good question. Closely related, depending on which of the testing companies you're looking at, usually means someone in your immediate family, your father or mother, your sister or brother, sometimes aunts or uncles, but something greater than a first cousin. The percentage worth researching, but that's a bit more of a complicated question. It depends on what your goal is. If you're looking for someone that is related to you on your great-grandmother's side, you're going to be starting with second cousins. So you might go down to the percentage where someone could be a second cousin or greater to you. It's worth looking at people down as far as you need to go to see if you can find a potential relationship. But they're really meaningful, in my experience, at about 20 centimorgans or more. That's because less than that, you're getting so far back, it can get very complicated keeping track of all those generations of people and their descendants. Does that help out, April? Anyone else have some questions? Well, Bryant, I guess that wraps it up for today.
I guess so. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Bonnie, for the great presentation. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. We'd just like to remind everyone about our webinar upcoming next week. It'll be on Friday at 4 p.m. And that'll be German periodicals with Larry Jensen. But thank you all once again for joining us. If you have any questions for Bonnie, her email is on the slide right here. Or if you have any technical difficulties or anything about the webinar, you can always email us at fhl_webinars@byu.edu. Thank you for joining us and have a great day.